Did we send an email out? Call the meeting to order. It is 10:02. We have a quorum, it's confirmed, so let's go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. And I forgot to confirm, do we have anyone joining virtually today?
Yes. Friend, Ariana, Cynthia Sarasota, and Jay Kramer.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will now open the meeting for public comment, including comments on any agenda items. On the screen, there are 3 ways for the public to provide input to the TAC. All comments will be shared with committee members and made part of the public record. Have any cards been received?
No.
All right. Is anyone here to make comment? Okay. We will now go on to item number 4 on the agenda, the approval of minutes for the Technical Advisory Committee meeting from January 13th, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January meeting?
So moved.
All right, motion by Jake Bibler.
Second.
All right, second by Clark Davis. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next on the agenda are our action items. We'll start with item 5A, Transportation Improvement Program TIP amendments. Pamela Barr with FDOT is here to present.
Good morning. We have two amendments for this meeting. We have the traffic signal 456052-1. It's for an equipment purchase for capital. It's an amount of $2,500,000. It's for ITS. And then we have for Manatee County, we have 5310 for the Easter seals for capital buses. And that's in the amount of 100,000. These things need to be done for the 24-25 TIP amendment.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to recommend MPO board approval of the Transportation Improvement Program amendments. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Paula Wiggins. Second.
Megan.
Now we're battling it out. Second by Megan Lou, because she's closer to me. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, indicate by nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Pam. Our next agenda item is 2025 project priorities, and we have Nina Venter with the MPO to present this item.
Good morning, everyone. Nina Venter, MPO staff. So what we're presenting to you today is the final draft list of the project priorities. A draft was included in your agenda packet sent out a couple weeks ago, but we did send out an updated draft list on Friday, which hopefully you would have received. The list remains largely unchanged, though we did receive some additional applications. 2 of them are under resiliency, several of them are under the Transform Tomorrow project, 1 TA project, and then some additions to the jurisdiction needs list. There were also some changes to the trip priority projects as requested by the jurisdictions. So those are really the only changes. We haven't received any other requests for changes to the list. So what was sent out on Friday is the final draft that we have presently, barring any further changes. But we would like to bring this to you all today, to recommend board approval. The draft list will go out to the board in their agenda packets at the end of this week. And they will vote on adoption, March 31st, after which we will send all the applications for funding consideration. With that, I do think we have several outstanding signatures on project applications, so we do need those as soon as possible. This week could be great. And then I know there's one outstanding jurisdiction needs priority list as well that we need. So we'll need that this week. Those cannot go to the board until we have the locals approved. So those are the only caveats. So I'll take any questions.
Yeah, well, you said you sent it Friday, the updated list?
Yes.
Okay. Also, there was a question on the Minnesota basketball. My understanding that it made it into the stiff in the tip. Is that not accurate?
So-
It is in the stipend tip.
Okay.
And it's in our LRTP, so
Right,
that's a greater question for the department. I don't think we need anything further. It wouldn't really make sense to need it in the priority list because that's really where its priority list would be how to get it in the stipend tip. So in our opinion, you should have what you need. If federal highway is coming to the department and saying they need something else, let us know. But we can provide you with the stipend tip location, the pages for that and the LRTP page, which I think.
right, that's what I thought we had all that taken care of, and
Yeah.
then I was like.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what else federal highway would be looking for, because you would only need the priority list to get it funded. That was done through raise or for a protect grant, so it kind of started navigating the MPO process, so.
Right, okay,
Shouldn't really need it on the priority list.
all right, thank you.
And I also did not receive that email. On Friday and the MPO TAC packet, I did not
Yeah.
receive it. So, yeah, it's,
Okay,
What is it?
we'll make sure that.
yeah,
We will make sure the mailing list is correct.
Okay.
Yes, with that though, I don't know what that means for adoption of the priority list. What I can do is I can read off the applications that we have received, but there really have been no major changes apart from the 2 applications received from Sarasota County.
Okay.
City of Bradenton submitted their applications and we received 1 or 2 from Palmetto as well. So if there's any questions about those, I can answer them.
so Friday, what changed was like those additional projects?
Those 3 things that you just mentioned.
Oh, okay,
Other than that, the projects that were existing, that were previously submitted, are unchanged unless there were specific changes requested by your jurisdiction. And the only that, ones that I can think of are the trip priorities, designations on the list. Otherwise, scores would have remained the same, limits would have remained the same. So just the addition of the projects.
Was this the document that had something at one of the last meetings about the funded partially or fully? And having some clarity on that of how much is funded, or was that a different?
That was a comment that was received to include language that the funding designation does not mean fully funded, so we added in the language in that box to say partially or fully. So the draft should say draft March 7th, 2025 on the bottom of the page.
And then if you wanted to see if it was fully or partially funded, where would be, like, would there be an option to add a column how much total and how much is funded?
No, we're not putting a total cost, it changes way too often. We used to have that in the priority list and weeks apart, they could be completely different, so.
Yelp dollar sign, it's like $2 and $5 signs.
Sure, we could say, you know, we can't afford it, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yelp has it, you know.
Yeah, no, but yeah, we fully understand, I mean, when the list was 2016, there was only about 12 projects on the priority list. Sure, we could do that. 150, with about 30 or 40 that haven't been started and the cost changing constantly. We'll certainly, like I said, we can look at, you know, what the next phases are, whether or not it's fully or not, that's what, you know, we need to fully explain what the next phase is. Next phase means it needs construction. If the phase is missing, then it doesn't need to be.
Is that a recommendation to shorten this list so that we could include that type of information?
I guess it's like $101 million things is very different than $100 million thing, and so length of list on page is different than length of list in time or length of list on. They can have.
Understood.
So for this priority list, what is different this year is that we included the ID number for all the funded projects.
Okay.
So you can check the STIP to see what the funding size is.
I appreciate
For the tips, right?
Just did anybody in the room receive the bill on Friday? Okay. Okay, we'll double check. I have that we've had an issue in the past where links have not been received by MPO staff or sent out. Even though they didn't left their boxes, so I'll double check on that and we can check with our IT team as well. But I guess one option is I can go and I can add the priority list to the share link and get that sent out if you want to take a look at it before voting. Otherwise, if you're comfortable moving forward with the action,
Part of moving on the script.
Jump around the next thing.
So do we want to move to the next item and then?
You can table it.
Yeah, do we have a motion either way?
Suggestion, could you print it out, bring them out, and we go through the items and then have that one list? I mean, just a quick glance, I don't know.
Okay, so we'll, yeah, sure, so we will.
Come
on and vote on that, right? To vote it, okay, so yeah, we'll table it real quick and we will move to our next item. Our next item is 5C. FWHA / FDOT performance measures, PM2 and PM3, and Varshini Radakunta, and with the MPO will present this item.
alright. Good morning, everyone. I am Varshini and I will give you a quick update on performance measures 2 and 3, which focuses on infrastructure condition and systems performance. So the federal transportation law requires state DOTs, MPOs and TPOs to implement these transportation performance management, which is a strategic approach to making their investments and decision makings in a strategic way. So the transportation performance management has 5 performance measures. The first one is highway safety, the second one is bridge and pavement conditions, the third one is systems performance and freight movement, and then we have transit asset management and transit safety. So the board adopted performance measure 1, the safety targets, early this year in January. And we kind of include the transit safety with highway safety performance measure. And the transit asset management is something the transit agencies adopt, and the MPO kind of supports their asset management and transit safety. So the MPO itself, we have PM1, 2, and 3. The PM1 was adopted early this year, and now we are taking PM2 and PM3 for adoption. So for these target settings, the agencies have 2 options: either supporting the targets that were set by the state DOTs or their regional public transportation providers, or the MPO establish their own targets based on
based on our local priorities. So previously, like historically, Sarasota Mandi MPO has always supported state targets for performance 2 and 3, and for performance 1, we kind of set our no, for performance 1 also we do support the state targets. So basically, these performance management framework help us monitor and improve transportation infrastructure condition and the system's performance. Okay, so this is a map of national highway system, and in the region Sarasota and Manatee, we have US 41, US 301, I-75, 275, State Road 70, and State Road 64. So the performance measure 2 and 3 usually assesses the conditions for these NHS networks. So that's one of the reasons why the MPO chooses to support states' targets is because the MPO itself doesn't monitor or measure any of these conditions on the NHS. So performance 2. So this basically measures or assesses the conditions of bridges and pavements on NHS based on these 6 measures, which is percent of pavement on the interstate system, which is in good or bad conditions, and percentage of pavement on the non-interstate NHS system, which is in good or bad conditions. So that's for pavement conditions. And for bridges, we have percentage of NHS bridges by deck area that are in good and bad conditions. So for all those infrastructure that is in good condition, we do not suggest any further improvement just yet. But for those in poor conditions, there's a major suggestions of investment. The metrics or the table on the right in blue is the existing statewide conditions for bridges and pavement. So if you notice, the infrastructure that's in poor condition has like steadily declined. So our bridges and pavements are performing good. And then on the left is the targets for 2023 and 2025. So the MPO adopted these 23 and 25 targets in 2022, like late 2022. And now we are since the state updated its 25 targets, we are also adopting those updated, like the board will adopt those updated 25 targets. And they updated these targets because since the infrastructure that's in poor condition has been performing better, so we are kind of pushing our goals or targets a little further harder so that it kind of performs even better. So the adjusted target in PM2 is the NHS bridge conditions that are in poor conditions. So earlier, the percentage of bridges in poor conditions was 10%, and now the state kind of updated to those percentages to 5%. And performance 3 is systems performance. So this PM kind of measures the reliability on NHS of passenger and truck freight travel. So this is measured using 3 measures, which is interstate reliability, non-interstate reliability, and truck travel time reliability. And all of these are measured by using percent of person travels that was traveled on interstate that is reliable or not. So similarly, on the right is the existing conditions, and on the left is target settings. So the change for this one is interstate reliability and non-interstate. So the previous adopted targets for 2025 were for interstate reliability, it was 70%. So now they've pushed it to 75% reliability on interstate. And for non-interstate, it was 50% previously for 2025 target, and now they've updated it to 60% reliability on non-interstate NHS. And so this is basically the summary of all the updates to the performance measures 2 and 3. For PM2, it's again the bridge conditions. It was earlier 10%, and now the updated target is 5%. For interstate reliability, it was 70 earlier, and now we want the interstate about 75% of the network to be reliable. And for non-interstate, it was 50, and now the updated target is 60%. Yep, And with that said, I can take any questions.
With the more stringent conditions, is there anything that shapes our priorities?
So
Like, are we adjusting our priorities if like the bridges are twice as strict, if you will?
No, we were outperforming them, and we attended statewide meetings, we brought up a number of times that we were drastically undershooting, what I think what we were already performing at, right? So in terms of reliability and bridge condition, we're nowhere near, less than 1% of the state bridges are in poor condition, you know, having it at 10, we argue is, what are we saying, we're okay with them getting worse over time, or should we be a bit more direct? We're still meeting those by quite a bit, same with 75% of the interstate, you're 90 currently, so we're already meeting those, so I think this is a step in the right direction. We've asked the state to be more, I think, critical of themselves, especially with safety being such an aspirational target. Being very conservative in the other targets probably doesn't make all that much sense. So we're glad to see this shift from the state's perspective, and I think it's going to continue. We'd like to see probably a bit more strict. But since these are mainly reported on state facilities, there's probably not shift outside of the states. So we're still going to continue what we're doing.
Not seeing any other questions, so I will now entertain a motion to recommend MPO board endorsement of the performance measures PM2 and PM3. Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
All right, moved by
Thank you.
Albie. Still can't see it.
So, yep, Albie Reed.
Corrales, thank you. And second? Second by Alyssa Thomas, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. All right, motion passes, thank you. So now do we want to go back to 5B? Well,
We're not.
hopefully they were paying us a good meal. So you want to take a moment and, let everyone look over. All right.
Yeah, we can do that if you're forced. We don't have to stay in this section. We can continue to do it. We can finish.
Can we take
the
Because they have a, yeah.
Sure, we can do that too. You wanna rush yourself, let's get it.
I have an extra copy here if you want. No.
Anyone have any questions?
Any changes to the projects that you'd like to see on the list, you can let us know now. So Martin, our clerk, and Macintosh is on the priority list. If I remember correctly, the department wanted that on your list.
Hold on.
On page 3.
Page 3, FDOT partnership. Hold on. That seems to ring a bell. I got way too many things in my head. Let me check something real quick, but I think that that's an accurate statement. I just need to verify.
Hello, looks for that.
Yeah.
Can I ask, so the braided projects that got added were related to the Beacon Park project?
There were 4 related to the, there was 1, added to TA, and then there were 2 added under.
Yeah.
And then, a couple other ones.
We did have. Jurisdictions. So we submitted, we wanted Macintosh Clark to be trip funds to we can still have it as trip and it be on the jurisdiction, or does it have to be on the?
You've gone down that road before. That's like, it can be applied for trip funding, not necessarily be a field priority. As a.
Yeah, because there was an issue with state and federal money that's been applied to that project. That's, then yes, we want it on the jurisdictional needs, but still be able to apply for trip funds.
You can do that.
The change, this, okay.
We'll move down. Make it out.
Is there any additional questions? Are we ready to vote? Okay, so I will now entertain a motion to recommend MPO board approval of 2025 project priorities with the suggested change by Paulo. Is there a motion? All right, Megan has moved to recommend approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Clark Davis. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion has passed. Thank you all for your patience with that one. And we will now move on to the presentation portion of the agenda, starting with 6A, the FDOT report. I think, yes.
Good afternoon, or good morning. It's been a long day already. Okay, so this now is the season of legislative earmarks, where people are bringing earmarks to the legislature. If you have any say in it, please try to defer that, because every time they do an earmark, it messes with what we're planning here. The list of priority projects and the trip projects. When an earmark passes, it has to take funds from someplace else in the budget. So it will delay a project because somebody got an earmark instead. They don't give the state any more money. It has to come out of the budget. With that being said, we have, I don't know if we did it last quarter, but we have completed the joint certification, the annual joint certification for the MPO. They did well. They have a low risk on the investments we're putting forth into their UPWP, and we've gone through invoices and LRTPs and their other documents, and they have excelled at 100%. So they should be bringing are you guys bringing the cert to board for signature? And then they'll return it to us and we'll sign, and this will be the annual certification for the MPO. I think that's next. There is I got it here. In April, there will be a public hearing in Northport. And I will send out the information to the MPO so that they can distribute it, but the public hearing will be in April for their projects. Other than that, I think that's all I got for the FDOT.
Thank you. We will now move to the item 6.A.I.
From the addendum that was sent out on.
Oh, really?
Thank you, okay, like the addendum, John Kubik.
Yeah, very well.
Well, we'll give this report.
Good morning, everyone. So unfortunately, we all pretty much know these statistics. I'm just gonna hit on a training that we have. There's an opportunity that's available. We're looking for kind of the technical staff that's coming. So I'll hit on that at the end, but I just want to talk about what kind of trends are we seeing in the area. And so unfortunately, we're seeing 9 people die on our roadways just in the state of Florida every single day. And so as we talk about that, put that into context, we're talking about 571 fatalities. In just District 1 alone last year. All right, so looking at Manatee County, what types of crashes do we have? Lane departure, the training I'm going to be talking about is actually specific to lane departure. But that's 40% of our fatalities just in Manatee County alone are directly related to lane departure. I have a typo on the next slide here, sorry. This is actually Sarasota County here. Or did it? There you go. Yeah, that's a typo on this one, and this is for Sarasota County. So that same 40%, you can see some changes in the intersection and the non-motorized. So 47% of our fatalities are directly related to lane departure, and 248 fatalities on average are attributed to lane departure crashes each year in district. And let me hit on, it's not just a state road issue too. It's 35% are off-system roadways. So what are we doing? We've got a free training opportunity, the location still to be determined, we're working with Florida LTAC. As well as Federal Highway, that's why things are a little up in the air right now, is we're working with Federal Highway to offer the training. I'm shooting for April 15th, we'll be in Wauchula, where we're looking for mainly our Heartland counties to be there, and then April 16th. We're looking for a location to host the training, preferably we're looking in Lee County, so we can be a little more centralized. But if anybody has a space available, please let me know. We're looking to have about 30 to 50 people for a training opportunity. It will be an all-day training.
So you're saying it's April 16th. Is when you're scheduling this training
For the coastal counties, yes. Yep. Still to be determined, but the gist of it is gonna be what kind of countermeasures can we put on our roadways to address both on and off system, but we're gonna put a special emphasis on rural roadways and emphasis on off system roadways as well.
When you have that set up, can you send it to MPO for their attempt to distribute?
Yes, as soon as we have it, I will let you know. Unfortunately, one of the reasons why we're getting slowed up was we had Federal Highway already had it approved, and then they had to go back now and seek pre-approval to be able to come down for the train. I think that's all the slide. I have.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the MPO report, starting with 6BI, Draft Joint Transportation Regional Incentive Program, also known as TRIP, Project Priority List, and Ryan Brown with the MPO will present this item.
Thank you. So we brought forward again, we mentioned it at the January joint meeting, discussion of the board related to the TRIP list. This is the first draft of the 2 TRIP lists with Charlotte and Polk County. As you know, we do have a voted upon, I guess, handshake agreement with the 2 counties regarding how we're going to split TRIP funds. And we had the opportunity to come around and speak with each of you about our local revenue sources. We have a presentation on that today as well. With that being said, you know, the district averages about $7 or $8 million a year in TRIP funding. Needless to say, the items on this list far outweigh the amount of funding that's actually available for TRIP. So we're happy to move forward with the priorities as presented and provided to you all through applications, with the understanding that it's unlikely that we're going to see that level of funding considered for these TRIP projects. So I will happily take any questions. This isn't going for adoption at this meeting. It'll be coming back in May for adoption by the board. We're still awaiting. You'll notice on the Polk list, their 3 projects are highlighted. They have not yet formalized their projects on that list. They're still awaiting some responses from Polk County. So that list is still in draft format. We simply wanted to bring it forward to you all to say, does this look right based off of your applications that were submitted? So with that, I'll take any questions related to the TRIP list.
Given the adjustment that was made a few minutes ago to the project priority list, does State Road 72 at McIntosh get interleaved at some point in there, or does it?
It's already on. It's already on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already on there. We're just moving it on the priority list around. Yep.
It's just right here.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, those will be formal, those will be formalized in the next month or so, as Polk County provides their updated list to us. We're still working through the department on fair share and equity within TRIP. We're happy to see some TRIP funds applied to the Manatee County project in the last cycle. We still think that there's a bit of inequity in terms of the overall in the last decade or so. So we're still working through that with the department to make sure that our 2 county area and urbanized area getting its fair share of TRIP funds. So with that, we don't really require any action right now. Please feel free to let us know if you've got any comments or questions about the TRIP list and if we can make any amendments before May. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have 6BII, Ed Smith Planning Study, Brian Suarez, AICP, Kimley Horn and Associates will present this next item.
So as a part of our 2025 LRTP, there were 3 baseball studies that were that came out of the LRTP. The first one was the LECOM study, which we adopted in 2023. The second one is Ed Smith, and we kicked off this study in October, November last year, and this is the first update that we're giving to the committee members, and we have Ryan Swiss here, our consultant with Kimion, and he is here to give you an update on the presentation, on the project.
Good morning, everyone. Ryan Suarez with Community Board. Is it okay if I stand on this side? I see everybody standing over there. I feel like I got everybody in my view here. Thank you, Varshini, for that intro. Yeah, as you mentioned, we kicked this off, I want to say November. This will be the first of several status reports that we'll give to the committees. So we'll talk a lot about like general project overview. I'm going to throw a bunch of data at you as well. I'd like to get some feedback from folks as well. This is a good opportunity to engage this technical advisory committee with some thoughts on where we're headed as well. So keep that in mind. I may pause on a couple of slides just to allow folks to kind of think through some of the information I'll share. Focus areas are shown here. The multimodal network, access, safety, game day versus non-game day transportation issues. We were actually at a game this past Saturday observing traffic safety, pet activity. It's very insightful. I'll get to that in a separate slide. And then, of course, the interaction between land use, the context of the streets and the different neighborhoods that are in the study area. That's important as well. The results piece here, this goes back to the days I spent in Manatee County, focused on results first. That used to be kind of a mantra that the administrator had at the time. We do want to organize improvements into short multimodal safety and access improvements into short, medium, long-range projects for inclusion into the MRTP. So that's context here on the project. The study area boundary is shown here on the west side, 301. On the east, Beneva, north 17, and on the south, Fruitville. Now, some of you may be asking, hey, Ryan, this is or MPO status. I thought we were talking about Ed Smith. Yes, you are right. It's about Ed Smith. But in fact, a lot of these neighborhoods do stand to gain from some of the multimodal improvements that are that we're going to be looking at as part of this project. So we got to think about this. You know, the streets don't end just outside of Ed Smith. They do go further beyond. And this is important because there are ongoing priorities from the county and the city to look at multimodal improvements on some of these corridors, specifically 12th Street, Tuttle, and Fruitville. Those are just a few examples. So what we come up with does have to align with some of those desires that have kind of popped up in other plans. In terms of project schedule, really got a ton of tasks, but to make it simple, we've organized it into these 3 phases. Existing deficiencies, what are going to be those treatments and solutions, and then its implementation into the next 3. One of the important aspects here on the schedule is aligning this with the LRTP development. That process is ongoing now. So we do want to have some initial recommendations. We'll come back to you, I think, at the next TAC meeting in May with some of those items for further consideration into development of the cost feasible plan. I think this calendar is a little bit longer. I think the NPO does plan to have the LRTP completed sometime by the end of the year. So that's the general overview. Any questions on that from the group? Okay, very good. So I'm going to get into some data here. Again, some is context, some is specific. So I mentioned neighborhoods before. They're illustrated here. And then we've got those major points of interest. We do have an elementary school just south of the stadium facility on Tuttle. We do have a large neighborhood, or at least it covers a big geographic area in Park East. We do have a market analysis. I have a couple of slides on that. We can talk about what the makeup of this community is and who lives here. Important is the Limelight District. This is an industrial area along the railroad tracks. There are some vendors and tenants that are trying to reinvent themselves into something that's a little bit different than what's traditionally associated with heavy commercial and industrial development. So all these things are important in terms of the network, right? So keep that. Future land use is important, that's why I show this here, because there is an exercise here on understanding context. Who's not familiar with the term context class or the FDOT context classification? All right, very good, I didn't think I need to go into a lot of detail with this group. This is important, the city has developed engineering and design standards that speak to the desired features within certain city roadways that align with land use and the land use context that's illustrated here. Those are pieces that we need to be aware of and also incorporate into the potential solutions that are going to be implemented here. Questions on that? Very good. So what's out there in terms of multimodal facilities? This graphic illustrates that. I know it's sometimes difficult to see this stuff. I'm just going to summarize what's here, just in some quick bullets. We do have bicycle and ped facilities on many of the major roadways. There are some disconnects and some gaps in each one of those services. I'll have some images later on in the presentation. It's one thing to look at maps. It's a whole different thing to be on the ground and see how these things function and how different users are using the bike and ped facilities as well. So keep that in context as well. In terms of trails, just to the east, we do have the Circus Trail that connects to Bobby Jones. This is one of the reasons we did have to extend the study area boundary to connect to that, because there's some interest in making that southern section of Geneva Road a little more accessible, safer. The Legacy Trail does abruptly end here at Fruitville. There's still some discussions about making that extension and making that work. There's this beautiful walkway on 8th. It's really just multimodal path for peds and cyclists. And it sits right across the street from Tuttle Elementary. So I got a couple of images on that. But before we get to that, crash data, safety, really, thank you very much, FDOT, for your presentation on safety. I think that's a good segue here. What we've got is a few things that are overlaid. We've got the crash density. Wherever it's most yellows, that's where the most intense concentration of crashes have occurred. And this is 5-year data. And then, of course, this crash severity laid over that. Fatal crashes in red, serious injury crashes in orange. You see that we've got some densities here at Geneva, Fruitville, Tuttle and Fruitville, and then just a lot of activity over at 301. In terms of the north side, we've got concentration again up on Lockwood Ridge and 17th. Interestingly enough, when you look at we just pull out the bike and ped incidents. Some of these do align with the severity that's shown, the crash density that's shown here. I'll call out a few. We do have really a big grouping of crashes here in this general vicinity of Geneva and Fruitville, especially here. I think this is Circus Boulevard. I believe there's been some improvements to that signalized intersection to improve ped crossing as well. You'll see some crashes on Tuttle. Now, again, we were out there for the ball game this past Saturday. Saw a lot of bike traffic up and down both directions. And a variety of different users. They had tricycles, they had electric bikes, and just regular bikes as well. Some of them making some just very unsafe movements across the street in Tuttle on some very random locations, let's put it that way. And then again, you'll see the concentration of crashes over here on 301 as well. Oh, there's one more spot I'm going to call attention to, and this isn't consistent here with this crash information. Lockwood Ridge and 17th, you'll see that that intersection looks pretty messy in terms of bike and ped crashes. Any thoughts on this? Any anecdotal information, bike riders who belong to this group experienced something they want to share? Yes.
I'll add in, whenever they came and visited, we were at our 12th Street location and I rode my bike there and I didn't realize there was a field trip to Ed Smith Stadium. And I was like, well, I'm not riding my bike there, I'm not riding it down 12th Street. So I bike every day to work. I didn't today with the lightning. Thankfully, my car was done at the shop, which is also at 12th Street. So Alvin and I could both ride in a vehicle there, but I bike everywhere and I would not bike.
That's a good segue. Thank you very much. Anyone else before I jump into? Because there is a big difference between what's on 12th Street on the east side of the stadium and 12th Street on the west side. That's what it looks like on the east side. Yes, we have facilities. We've got a striped bike lane and we got a sidewalk. But it's pretty hot. One of our partners that was out there on Saturday, we took a temperature gauge to check temperature, and we have yet to kind of convene again. We're fresh off this field trip to the Orioles game. But I'm gonna be interested to see, he did record some pretty high temperatures. It's not shaded, the sidewalk is right next to the road. I think it's 40 miles an hour on 12, I'm not sure, I'll have to check that. Trevor, do you recall what the speed limit was?
I believe it's 40.
And you got the suicide lane, which that just, always makes it difficult, right?
Way less turn lane.
It's a way left turn lane, sorry.
Actually, it's 35 miles per hour in that segment, but everybody goes like 45 and 50.
It's not very, there's not a lot of traffic. It's not a lot of traffic, so I think that facilitates, higher speeds. So if we get closer to the stadium, you got some more investment, you got private investment, it's shaded, you got nice wide, I think it's 8-foot sidewalk. A lot of pets, a lot more comfortable space, an interesting environment, let's put it that way for biking and pet users. And then once you get further west, the right of way narrows. I think there's varying sidewalk network on one side versus the other side of the street. So it's, again, different, can't use the term context here, but different facility from one end to the other. Total, I think is gonna be a big focus for us, so I think that's why we've got it here. In terms of what this looks like, this is looking northbound or southbound? Is this looking northbound?
This is looking southbound.
It's looking southbound. It's the north side of our study area, but looking southbound towards 12th Street. This year, on Saturday, it was very, 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 very busy intersection. And I'll talk about that in just a second, but you can see kind of the cross section of the road. You do have a lot of utilities on both sides that are very close to the sidewalk. It looks like we're maximizing the space for cars, bike lane, and pedestrians. So it'd be interesting to see how much space we really do have to work with here on Tuttle. As we get further south, I mentioned the walkway, and this is the two signalized intersections, not including 17th and Geneva on the stretch of Tuttle. So this is the signalized intersection that connects to the school, connects the school over to the walkway park, which is on the west side of Tuttle. Again, you'll see the utilities like right abutting up to the sidewalk. And we saw that, and that's evident just for a lot of the stretch. Did you have a question, Megan?
No.
Okay, you're just scratching.
Yeah.
Further south on Tuttle, we have some medians, just like we did on the north side. And if we threw this in here just to, I guess, highlight the end of the Legacy Trail. That's not on Tuttle. That's getting closer over the line. And then Beneva. We added this because, and I'll toggle back to the crashes. Maybe I won't toggle back to the crashes. Interestingly enough, this one. We've got no bike ped crashes. Oh, I went too far. Oh, shoot, I screwed this up. Did I go too far? Okay. Interestingly enough, we have no crashes, no bike ped crashes on 17 and Beneva. So slide, the image that I have here at Beneva shows that cross section. Maybe we don't know how much bike and ped activity there might be at that intersection. But perhaps we have a lot of users that know to avoid that intersection. And then further south, again, these are just images to illustrate what's in and around this area. Again, I mentioned the crash density and crash severity that was going on in this part of the study. Any thoughts on this? I know I'm kind of breezing through this. Really quickly. So at Smith Stadium, all right, so now we're zoomed in to the stadium location itself. See Ed Smith over here with practice fields, the elementary school over here. Now, we were out there for the game on Saturday, so we want to take this opportunity to just provide some general observations. There is in fact a slowdown on Tuttle. Let's talk about like access to the game. So it was 1 o'clock game time, Orioles and the Rays. About 12 o'clock, this main parking lot was closed. Once that main parking lot closed, you do end up seeing a lot of backup all the way down to the walkway. That's at certain point. So, but it really only spanned from about, let's say, from 12 o'clock when that closed all the way to about 1 o'clock. So for a 1 hour period. Once the game started, this was really pretty clear for the most part. So it was short-lived. A little bit of a backup southbound because of the queues once this parking lot was closed. Folks on 12th Street trying to access the north parking area of the stadium. Again, that queue probably built up for about a half-hour period. As the game started at 1 o'clock, traffic was pretty clear. On the egress on the way out, movement, at least on this side, and I'm giving you my perspective because I was stationed over here on this part, not talk to our partners who are over here at Euclid and 12. But for the most part on the egress, I wouldn't say there were very big problems getting out of the stadium. That's because folks trickle out a little more slowly as opposed to arriving all at once towards the game end. So I'll pause on this one too. Anything anybody wants to share? Anything they've seen? We will be out there for another game on the 20th, the Yankees game. I believe I heard an announcement. We'll have to check back in. This game was not sold out. I think it was like 7,400 tickets sold. The capacity is like 8,500 at the stadium. So I don't believe this was a sold out game. The game that we're going to this coming next week, Thursday, that is a Yankees game. It's in the afternoon, 6 p.m. See what it looks like and what traffic conditions might be like again for a PM weekday game. Questions, thoughts, ideas, observations? How many folks are familiar with RIDIS data? Or not familiar? It's a very robust data set. Transportation system data is drawn from a variety of different sources. I think the strength of this for us is being able to understand variability in traffic by time of day. It does incorporate Bluetooth and geographic location information based on different apps that we use. It's one of those data sets that tracks. So, and it's got a robust data set. We can go back in time and look at game day and non-game day event activity. And then there's a variety of different types of data that we can pull. I've got a couple of examples just to show you what we've got here. Am I doing pretty good on time? Okay. Because I have 2 slides to illustrate the RIDIS data. Now, this is just one data point, right? Average speed versus posted speed. The type of information we can pull. So the posted speed is the blue line. What we got here is weekday, non-event, and weekday event information. The top is in the northbound direction on Tuttle, and the bottom is in the southbound direction. So this is the variation, this orange line in the average speed by hour of the day compared to posted speed limit. So, in northbound direction, in terms of the difference between weekday on-event and weekday event, this is probably the biggest difference that we saw, at least at this point. There's probably more we can drill down to. You'll see the difference in the average speed for those two. This makes sense and it aligns with some of the observations that we made this past Saturday. In terms of the southbound, there really wasn't a difference at 1 o'clock between the two, 20 and 25 miles an hour. I can't say that that's a significant difference on the event day. So what we've done here is just call out the lowest average speed by time of the day on the weekday non-event and on the weekday event day. One thing to note here is that the average speed, for the most part, is much less than the posted speed throughout the course of the day. Tells us a little bit about how fast folks are traveling through there, perhaps what type of traffic conditions, or who's using tow. Okay. At least for this segment. We also did Fruitville. Fruitville was a little funny because there's a range of speeds. That's why you see like a banner to illustrate what the posted speed, and the speed limit varies between 35 to 40, at least for the segment that's within our study area. Again, with this, we've got weekday non-event, weekday event. Am I losing anybody here? Is this making sense? Okay, all right, very good. I know this is a little technical. We'll spare the CAC these slides, I think we took. So, you'll see there's not a whole lot of difference, at least, on Fruitville, given the game day event. This was the one that we wanted to call out in the eastbound direction. And 5 p.m. and 4 p.m., that would be the time that we would assume that the game is maybe letting out. 5 p.m. might be a little bit too late. That might just be just traffic in general, Fruitville getting into that. Or other points east of town. And in terms of the westbound direction, you'll see that the pattern generally looks the same. So in terms of non-event or event, there isn't much of a difference going westbound. Questions, thoughts on this? Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Sorry, just a caveat to Redis data, just be mindful of it doesn't always take in the best account for the signals. And so the speed sometimes can be unreliable, just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay, I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, this shouldn't be confused with a spot speed study, because it's probably taken into account delay from all sources in terms of calculating the average speed. Your speed block will be pretty high for Will. There's no way people drive 20 when they can't even drive 50.
Yeah, no, appreciate those comments. Okay. All right, the market analysis is robust. We're not gonna share everything with you all here. There's 3 geographies that were compared, our study area, the city, and then the metropolitan statistical area. So, and that's inclusive of Bradenton. Now, there's a lot of elements that our team went into, which go into the different types of industry that are there, retail, commercial, industrial, just property, residential development, and average rents. That's just one example of some of the things they looked at. What we'll do here is just kind of just summarize some of the demographic information. A couple of highlights, blue, green, and orange for the 3 geographic geographies that were used. And I've called out a few for our study area that stood out in comparison to the city. And again, the grade, like we say, median age is lower, less, fewer proportion of household owners, less people with a bachelor degree. And then in terms of households with children, they are higher than the MSA and definitely much higher than the city. For those that are familiar with the study area, does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Silence. Okay. In terms of the economic piece, these are the pieces that we highlighted. less of these folks are white collar. So does that mean they're blue collar? That's something that for us to dig into. Median home values are lower. Surprisingly, the unemployment rate is much lower. But that may speak to how many folks are actually working or looking for work. The median household income is also lower than the MSA and the city of Sarasota. So it paints a little bit of a picture about who lives in this area. Any thoughts on this one? All right, so that was a lot of data. Let's talk about next steps and continuing actions. On the bullet list here, we've got Saturday's game that's complete. I mentioned next week's game on the 20th. We are organizing a bike audit with staff. So this is a walk audit, but instead of walking, we will be riding bikes. So we've got about 9 folks on the list. We'll be sharing spots or opening this up for some additional folks to join us. We don't want to make this group too big. We still have some routing to determine, but the idea is goes back to what I mentioned before, really getting on the ground, understanding facilities, obstacles, seeing what other users are doing, and then of course getting a firsthand account, firsthand perspective on how safe, how accessible these facilities are. We do have some operations analyses going on right now. Folks who are collecting up traffic data. Importantly is our interactive map. This is in the presentation that was shared with everyone. Please share with your constituents. It's an interactive GIS story map. Effectively, the tool at the very bottom allows folks to pull pins for different improvement types, place them directly on locations on the map, and then add a note about what they would like to see improved in that location. So this is one of our efforts to get out to the public and gather up public input. So feel free to access and provide us your input. You have a moment.
Can the MPO send that to?
It's open, ready, available.
And it's on the MPO's current planning studies section also. It's on the website.
Just the T's, send it to the T's.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Like I said, we'll be back here soon. And just to mention, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I got 2 questions. When you're doing your traffic study, you did a great job about asking people in here, like, for example, I'm sorry, I don't know. Alyssa, she was talking about, hey, no way in hell I'm gonna ride my bike there because of how dangerous it is. Are you asking people that when you're out doing your like boots on the ground study as well? Are you stopping people and like asking them?
Well, at the stadium, yes, we did, and I asked as many folks as would entertain a question.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the traffic counts are bona fide traffic counts, related tubes and then counting cars. And that's gonna be important because we'll model a few things, a few fixes in the modeling software. See what that does to capacity and through traffic. So, yeah, and again, part of our bike audit, if there's an opportunity, we'll wrestle some folks in. There is a presentation this afternoon to the CAC as well. And I do believe that we're gonna try to get a couple of folks from the BPAC onto our bike audit as well, so that they can also provide some input, maybe some anecdotal information that will support, any decisions that come out of this. Does that answer your question?
It does. I was wondering maybe like other opportunities, like sending a survey out, or I didn't know if that kind of stuff was available.
We got some outreach slated. We just haven't defined exactly how we're gonna go about that. So that's in the works as well.
And then for your market analysis, where do you guys pull that data from?
This is gonna be pulled from Esri Business Analyst, which pulls a lot of data from census data. And then there's also a component on the LEHD, longitudinal employment household. That what the D stands for. So a lot of that is also census based. So those are the 2 sources off the top of my head. I know they sometimes, that team works to corroborate some of that information with other sources. I have to ask them exactly all those data, where all that data comes from. Okay. And if you wanna chat about that afterwards, we can.
Sure.
So if you're looking for something like for
I was
an
just
application of Manatee County. Yes, sir. Oh, wait, we got a couple more questions.
Just, but we do have a similar, situation, in Charlotte County. Grace, there was a spring training on, one of our state road. We do have similar situation like this, but I'm not sure, what is your, population demographics, attending the game? You guys look into that?
We'd have to ask the Orioles if they actually collect that information. I would only be able to tell you. I'd have to make generalizations just by my observation. I'll tell you, ticket prices were between $18 and $48. I thought that was steep for a spring training game, but it was packed. So I think there's a high demand for these games, which allows them to charge those types of prices. So that tells you a little bit about who attends.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, the age group, the median age group that attends the, state, games. So, I mean, I don't know if you all looked into that. And is it, the data you all have is a, peak season data or average of peak season?
I would say the data we're using is game day. I mean, right now,
Okay.
play during the spring, yeah, this is spring training, game day data. I know they do have other functions that happen at the stadium, but in talking to the Orioles, there's not a lot of other activity that happens at the stadium. I mean, these are the big events, these spring training games. Again, I'd have to comment, but to respond to your comment about age groups, who goes there, we probably have to get more direct information from the Orioles. I can tell you a lot of my observations about who saw, but I don't want to make too many just generalizations about them. Clark, yes.
Do most people that attend games park at the stadium or elsewhere? Like if they're riding by car?
The majority will park at their lots.
So they have lots near the stadium.
Yeah, and the capacity I mentioned that one lot that was full. The north side lot didn't fill, but I wanna say it was about 95% full. The other lot that's a catty corner at the Cal Ripken facility, that one did not get full as well, but I wanna say it was probably at 95% as well. So for a sold out game, Clark, yeah, all these lots might be, what's that?
You just.
Okay, I'm sorry. So this is the big parking lot. This is the one that got full very quickly. And it's all paved, it's full on. So, this one again, 95%, same thing with the big lot on the north side.
And where I was headed with that, at Lee-Com, it feels like a lot filters in from the neighborhoods and other places in the city of Bradenton. And I was wondering with the stadium sat towards the north edge of your study area, if it made sense to look at Lockwood, Tuttle, or 301 coming in from the north and the types of bike and ped facilities you have for you. But if you're not seeing the people arriving from the north along those roads, then maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, what I observed were walkers, and it was just a handful going north. So it wasn't a lot. And I did stop and ask a few of those folks, and several of them mentioned they parked in the neighborhoods. So.
I know that there's people who walk along, was it 12th Street over by the complex coming from the east, going east from what? East to west.
There was a lot of folks, there were droves of folks coming from the east. Now, how many of those were parked further beyond the lot? It was hard to tell. That's quite a hike from the east.
Well, they park over there at the youth complex, or where the
What side?
football. It's like a street that goes up there and people park in that area.
It's for the Sarasota residents.
Yeah, the Redskin Field, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, there was a lot of activity coming this way. It's actually slowing down on the egress, the left-hand turn, folks going over from 12 onto product. Remember, that's a note for our Thursday team.
Right, yeah, we definitely observed that on Saturday as well. Every walk cycle, we had 30 to 50 people crossing from the athletic complex. From the northeast. And with that, we had plenty of bikers coming across that way as well.
I didn't see a lot of folks arriving by bike or by transit bus. I did see two folks after the game get on the bus on the 6th going southbound. But that was about the only like bona fide game attendee coming or going on bus. But again, these are just observations. And as I was out there from, before noon all the way to game start. And then after the game, on 5th inning, and then through after traffic cleared. So I think this maybe answers your question, Carl. Most folks ride by car, and there's plenty of parking to accommodate them. It's very different from the car. Yes.
So with Fruitville being your southern boundary there, a lot of times whenever I'm trying to cross Fruitville on my bike, I don't get picked up as a bike, and so it's car there. And then in order to go hit the ped signal, if I go through a cycle or two, then I have to cross a right turn lane, so making sure that there's not somebody there. So that might filter in some of your availability for people to get into the area.
Where? I missed it.
Fruitville and Lime's the last one that I had where I sat for 2 cycles.
Okay.
Trying to get north into the area.
Okay. You were on a bike?
2 bikes on the sensors.
Maybe, are you coming with us?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, it's a good conversation. Anyone else? Thoughts, comments? Apprehensions, reservations? All right, move on.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry.
All right, next we have 6B. The 2050 long range transportation plan. And it looks like Jill Quigley with Benish will present the goals and objectives.
Hi, everyone. Are there any opening comments before you just want me to get in it?
No, I guess I'll just quickly add that Jill, clearly, our team and Benish and our 3 consulting teams that are helping with our long range plan. We can provide a brief overview for you, our goals and objectives. I know we've garnered some feedback in the past, didn't really see a huge amount of feedback on what we're doing. A lot of these are aligned with federal and state goals that we're required to meet, and we really just wanted to refine these and get to the point of what we really want to accomplish with this long range plan. So you'll see some refinements, some comments from the general community as well as you all. And hopefully we can continue moving forward with our long range plan. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jill.
I'm gonna go kind of quickly, but so if you see something and you want to stop and comment, just interrupt me. So in putting together a draft of the goals, objectives, and measures, we identified some key takeaways about the goals, objectives, and measures. Mainly, they're fairly consistent and unchanged from 2045. The 2050 vision that was selected during phase 1, creating a balanced future, aligns very well with the 2050 goals. They are consistent with state and federal planning requirements. And there's good alignment between the preferred project types that we asked in the survey with the top ranked goals of safety, infrastructure, and environment. So to do this review of the goals, objectives, and measures, we had a 3-step process. We started with the 2045 goals and objectives, looked at those, then moved on into outreach, which consisted of a public survey as well as a forum that was held in Northport. I know several of you were there for that. And then kind of lastly, we reviewed federal requirements to make sure we're consistent with those. Before I get into the federal requirements, I'm going to talk a little bit about the outreach. There was a survey that was run from November through February, over 700 responses. There were 13 topical questions and 7 kind of demographic information questions. I'm just sharing with you the one where we asked people to rank the goals in order of importance. You can see here safety came out number 1, followed by infrastructure resiliency, and then environment conservation. As I mentioned, we did a forum in Northport that was in December, a little fewer participation. I wanted to show on this slide, we did an interactive poll during that event and we asked the folks there to rank the goals. Safety came up as number one, which was very consistent with what we got from the public survey. But you can see as we go down the line, there's a little bit of a difference. So whereas infrastructure and resiliency was number 2 for the public, it was 3 at the forum. Environment conservation, which was number 3 for the public, was 5th at the forum. So then getting into the federal requirements, on the left, here's what we looked at, the latest transportation funding bill, LRTP requirements letter, national planning goals, and then some recent federal actions. On the right is the result, right? There have not been any changes as a result of the transportation funding bill. It didn't make any changes really to the metropolitan planning process. We understand that there is a draft letter out, but it has not been released yet. So for now, we're still working with the 2018 LRTP requirements letter. So there were no changes there, no changes to the national planning goals. We did identify, and you'll see as we go through the goals, several wording changes that are in response to recent executive actions, including recension of the equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility initiatives, and also environmental justice, minority and low-income populations, and then the rescission of all prior executive orders related to climate change. So now we're going to go through each of the goals. For all the goals, we took the bulleted statements from 2045 and tried to make them into sentences. So you'll see that's the biggest difference. And then the objectives. So for the economy here, we really haven't made any changes. It's stayed the same, seeking to improve accessibility and connectivity by promoting proximity to jobs and efficient movement of freight and goods, and no changes to the objectives from 2045. For environment, this is one of the ones, there's a wording change in the objective. Objective number 3 is used to say support green infrastructure. We've gone back to support low impact development. This may be one of the bigger changes. This was previously equity/livability. We're recommending that it just be livability now, given the federal actions. And that's also reflected here in this last objective, which used to say ensure equity in all transportation decisions, and now it's economic opportunity to be consistent with the federal direction. No changes to the infrastructure goal. Again, just created more of a statement out of the 2 bullets, and really no changes to the objectives. Mobility, same thing. No changes here. Really no changes to the goal statement. There was only one, same for objectives. Project delivery is relatively the same. The goal statement again is just condensed into a sentence or 2 from those same 3 bullets. And then safety also is relatively unchanged. We did add a new objective that was something that was recognized in the goal statement previously, which is to plan for efficient evacuations and safe returns. And technology, another area where there were not any changes. So going back a little bit to public input, we also asked people about preferred project types. So what type of projects did they think the MPO should invest funding in? And you can see on the left from the public survey, traffic flow and safety, safer walking and intersections were kind of top for the public. In the forum, we asked a similar question, not quite the same. You can see there was a heavy emphasis on transit improvements, bicycle pedestrian improvements, intersection and operational improvements being a little lower. So what's next? We're continuing to work on the prioritization process. There's going to be additional outreach in phase 3 of the plan to develop a cost feasible plan. And we're looking to align available funding with priority projects that support these goals that we've just reviewed. So are there any questions or comments on this? Thank you.
It looks like for our next presentation, we have Franco Saracino with Gittleson and Associates, who will present on the cost feasible plan development.
I'll do a brief intro, and thank you for being here, Franco, and yes, we've done a number of, we've done a number of our town tours, we just wrapped those up, and I know we discussed some of this information briefly with you all. Considering our revenue forecasting, the direction we're heading with our cost feasible plan. Franco's gonna give you another high level overview, and then what we're coming in looking at, really getting into the meat of the project, and the plan is starting the program project, so. With that, I'll hand it over to Franco, and we'll get doing this.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Franco Saracino, with Gittleson Associates. Nice to see you all today. I'm gonna be talking primarily about revenues today, but I want to start with what are the federal requirements for LRTP? As we all know, it's a plan that has to be updated once every 5 years. And we have to demonstrate the cost feasibility of the plan. In other words, we have to prove in the plan that we can afford the projects we include in it. How do we do that? We simply create cost revenue balance tables of projects that are organized in terms of 5 and 10 year time bands. So we've got not just cost feasibility, but priority in terms of when the projects are planned to be implemented. And for each of those time bands, obviously cost has to be less or equal to revenue. How we get there is a process. It starts with developing revenue forecasts in year of expenditure dollars in those 5 and 10 year time bands, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. The next step is prioritize projects. So using the goals and data that Benish is working on, that Jill talked about, we'll prioritize projects using that data-driven process. Then obviously we need project cost estimates, which includes planning, engineering, right-of-way, and construction costs. Clearly, we subtract any costs that have already been, of phases that have been completed or that are programmed. To be clear, the revenues that I'm going to share today start at 2025 through 2050. But really that first 5 years is just for show, because the first 5 years is accounted for in the TIP. And so that's not included in the cost feasible plan development process. So then once we know the project costs and the priorities, we allocate funding to the projects in prioritized order from the most appropriate and earliest available source in those revenue buckets. One exception to the cost feasibility rule is that we can include something we call box funds programs. What that means is taking some money off the top, typically for state federal revenues, and including them as programmatic investments in a variety of projects in the respective categories. So for example, in the 2045 LRTP, we had congestion management box fund, we had an active transportation box fund. And what that does is it gives us the flexibility to just include a list of projects, all of which are eligible, technically cost feasible, and that bucket of funding that accounts for it. The drawback of box funds is it sort of undermines the clarity of the priorities. It's the trade-off between clarity and priority and flexibility on the other side. So in the 2050 plan, we're going to take a little bit more of a streamlined approach to boxed funds, limiting the number of projects included in those categories, prioritizing them, and just kind of adding a little bit more detail in that process. So the revenue sources that we're dealing with that I'll share with you today, our estimates of include local sources, which include state distributed fuel taxes. These are fuel taxes that every county in the state gets. By formula, it's a function of population, area of the county relative to state population and area. And those funds can be used for any transportation expense. Local option fuel taxes, these are the fuel taxes that Manatee and Sarasota counties have elected to adopt. Include 3 sources, the 1 to 5 cent, the 1 to 6, and the 9th cent. These are a little bit more nuanced in the types of projects that can be, where they can be spent. For example, the 1 to 5 cent is for capital improvement needs only, versus the 1 to 6 is available for O&M. We have the infrastructure surtax in both counties. And of course, impact fees, both municipal and county impact fees and mobility fees. On the federal side, we have the standard sources, STBG, which we know as SU funds, which is the most flexible funding source for the MPO to allocate. Transportation alternatives for multimodal improvements, non-SIS state highway system, a portion of which can be spent on non-off-system facilities, formerly known as other arterials or other roadways. We have the carbon reduction program for projects that reduce greenhouse emissions, and of course TRIP that you're familiar with, as well as transit, both local and state federal. In terms of the revenue estimates, and to be clear, we developed the Manatee County and Sarasota County local revenue estimates. The state federal estimates were provided to us by FDOT. So for Manatee County, we're estimating a little over 4 billion in revenues for the next 25 years. Again, the first 5 years of that, we won't be using in the cost feasible plan. But this is just to be comprehensive. This includes the full 25 years. The biggest source is the sales surtax, which is about 1.9 billion. In previous plan updates, if the tax had a sunset date somewhere in the plan horizon, we cut it off there. This time we built in the assumption that it will be extended to 2050, based on the history of the sales surtaxes for both counties. So this assumes that tax will be in place through 2050. One caveat to that 1.9 million is that it is a gross estimate. In other words, it includes all sales surtaxes that we estimate will be available. Based on the current Manatee County budget, 85% of which is for transportation, the rest is for parks, public safety. So 15% of that will come off the top. 1.1 million in impact fees and about 1.2 billion in fuel taxes. Another caveat, though, is that a good portion, perhaps the majority of the fuel taxes will be allocated to existing system O&M. So we won't have those funds available to fund new projects, at least the majority of them. Same situation for Sarasota County, a little bit more at 5.1 billion. Same caveat on the sales surtax, the difference being that Sarasota County allocates a lot more of it to non-transportation expenses. Half of it goes to the school board. A good portion of the other half goes to parks, neighborhoods, public safety, and a variety of other sources. So assume that 65% of that 3.7 billion will not be available for transportation investments in the plan. Same story for local options and state fuel taxes. And of course, we have our impact fee. One thing I should point out, in Manatee County, we have a large increase in impact fee revenue relative to the 2045 plans. And part of the reason for that is development patterns. The other part is the escalated impact fee rates. So this assumes the 2028 rates will be in effect through 2050 for impact fees, county impact fees. We get to
Do you have a number on the Sarasota County that shows what that part removed, just since it's so much?
Yeah, no, I don't have that, 65%, so it's probably 2.4 billion. Yeah, it's a lot. And a lot of these funds, that comes off the top because it's for non-transportation expenses. The O&M costs that come off of the fuel taxes, I wish I could have shared more today. We're still working through those details. But just, those numbers, I estimate about half of what you see here will be available for transportation.
And Marco, to the extent that the county or a jurisdiction has committed to specific projects already, then you would incorporate that information from their capital plan.
Of course. Although the majority of the LRTP is beyond the next 5 and 10 years, which is typically not included in those plans. But yeah, of course.
So then it becomes potential.
Yeah, right. All right, so state federal, 1.9 billion, which is the majority of it is SIS. And I didn't list that in the revenue source list because technically it's not revenue. CIS is the cost of improvements in the CIS cost feasible plan. So that represents more than half of the state federal funding. And it's actually about less than half of what it was in 2045. And again, that's just the reflection of what's in the CIS cost feasible plan that's developed in Tallahassee. We've got 300.
Say what you just said again about it, the comparison we have here to 2045.
We have half the money that we did that effectively across the board.
The MPO does or the
State as well.
The projected revenue.
Okay,
So this was about 50% off.
because we just like missed it by a mile in the 2045. Okay.
Effectively, yes.
Okay.
And that is the case for the non-CIS SHS, significantly lower. It's about 30% of what it was in the 2045. For CIS, it's just a reflection of what is funded in the current CIS cost feasible. It's not actually a revenue estimate, it's a reflection of the project costs in that plan.
The estimated revenues are provided to us by central office at Florida DOT.
Right. What I'm taking away from this is they wildly overestimated that last time, or this time they're trying to course correct it.
So,
Okay.
For those particular programs, that's correct. So when we compare those three sources, the two county revenues and state federal, this chart looks upside down relative to the 2045. And it'll even out some once we account for O&M and non-transportation sales surtax allocations. But the fact of the matter is those Manatee and Sarasota County bars will still be higher than the state federal bar. Which means that we're gonna have to rely more on those local dollars to fund the cost feasible plan, this update that we have in the past. Again, 50% decrease in state federal, 50% of which is CIS. And again, about half of the state, of the local revenues will be taken up by debt service, as I mentioned, debt service, O&M and other infrastructure. So we can assume it's about $4.5 billion of local funds and 1.9 billion of state federal.
So with the bilateral infrastructure, the current federal funding legislation, there were more grant programs and less formula funding. If that philosophy at the federal level were to shift again, does that help our gold bar, and does it apply a big amount?
Yeah, nearly 90% of the new money, they said they effectively doubled in the bill in the IIJA. 90% of that new money was discretionary grant programs. Those are always viewed in ceiling as well, right? So the amount that's actually been authorized is substantially less than actually was made available in that bill. So that is not reflected in this at all, right? Ours, we saw like 30% increase probably between SU money between the prior and now. And if you look at we can provide the comparison that was provided to us for the Sarasota Manatee region between 45 and the 50. They've held a lot of those things constant. The only thing that was kind of consistent was the formula-based funding that we received. It increased a little, but not substantially. Most of the new money is in discretionary programs.
The state estimates have inflation and increased revenues built in to them, and of course, the inflation on costs of the project applies to all projects. The federal funds are not inflated in the estimates because it takes an act of Congress and they go with authorizations, and we'll see what the next one has. But so those are static based on what they projected, and the reality is that they will likely go up.
Well, I have for you. Any other questions?
For the O&M, how much does it take into account new infrastructure? So like we're putting this 2025 project priorities out, and there's some that just replaces and takes care of what we already have, and then there's some that creates new obligations. How much is that factored in?
That's difficult to factor in. We typically assume that the existing system O&M costs will cover the cost of those projects that are offset by other projects.
That makes sense for where we're replacing, but where we're going 2 to 6 lanes or we're adding interchanges or.
Yeah, we typically don't, for the state highway system, those numbers are rolled up in statewide estimates. So we're not required to account for those. For local, again, we just assume we assume that the same proportion of gas taxes and other sources that are used for O&M will be available for existing system owner. We don't break that out.
So will the final version of the column charts account for your assumptions about how fuel taxes are allocated between O&M and capital and how infrastructure surtax is allocated between transportation and other facilities? Okay. Yes, it's where 32% of the proceeds from a penny, we don't have a penny times, but that's it's about that, so it's involved way out there, and so is unless they change their thing, which they've had time to do. It's been 10 years or more since I've had to think about stuff like that, but I mean, it was like 25% of the proceeds from a penny. That's roughly consistent with what you had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll, like they said, we'll keep an eye on, the current infrastructure bill is authorized through the fiscal year, federal fiscal year 26. So pending that, all ours are also held constant on existing allocations. So to your point, Clark, if that was to be updated, that's something that we would certainly look at. But for now, that's, our SUTA carbon reduction, as long as it exists. Those things are held constant with our current allocation. So in 2026, we maxed out over the beginning of this act. We slowly grew SU and PL balances, and then in 2026 will be the max from that authorization. So that will be a constant. They can continue or extend the existing bill, which they've done in previous years, a number of years in a row, or they can somehow come together and I think pass an infrastructure bill, which would be interesting to see. Yeah.
One other question on the fuel tax. Was there any look at electric vehicles and what the composition that is on the road, and how it impacts fuel tax and then wear and tear?
Yeah, based on the US Energy Information Administration, we included a factor, I think it's about 1.1% per year of reduction in fuel consumption to account for that.
Okay.
Let us know. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Oh.
Wait.
Hey, Matt.
The revenue estimates we saw today were in constant dollars, or that taking into account that? I think you were headed that way eventually, but that's what we also saw today, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Now, the last item under the MPO report is the 2050 LRTP CFP model development interactive map, and Varshini will present this item.
All right, last but not the least, we have the 2050 LRTP cost feasible model development, and for those who are unfamiliar with it, I'll give a quick overview of what it is. So the FDOT districts develop a regional planning model simultaneously when the MPO is working on their range transportation plan to kind of assist or help determine our cost feasible plan. So this regional planning model is it spans over 5 years, and it's loosely divided into three main phases. The first one is developing or collecting the baseline data. So for this 2050 LRTP, it was 2019 baseline data. So after the baseline data, the MPOs or the EOs, they work on developing the 2050 socio-economic data projections with a 5-year interval throughout 2050, present to 2050. So after that, the district works on developing E+C network, which is existing and committed networks, which are currently existing or committed to be funded for construction until 2028. So that's phase 2, and based on phase 1 and phase 2, the third one is the cost feasible model development. So this model, so the district runs a model which has 6 alternates, and this is mostly for cost feasible projects, which are mostly capacity projects. So we have 6 alternate runs that the MPO submits as our priority. So based on these 6 alternate model runs, the district kind of projects the volume over capacity for each of those runs, and it gives us an idea of where we could focus our projects for capacity improvements. So that's a little interactive map that I have. And it was shared to all of you in the email, but I think that email didn't go through. So we will have this attached to our website sometime today. Okay, so when you first open the map, there's a pop-up flash screen that pops up. So this gives you an information of what 2050 cost feasible is, what you're doing, and when you scroll down, there's some information on how to navigate through that map. So you just read all of that and click OK. And on your top right, this icon right here is the layer stack. And when you click on that, you can see all those layers that are in there. So each model run has 3 set of layers. The first one is alternate 1, which is what the segments that the MPO submits to the district as our priorities. And the second one right here is the alternate 1 projected B by C. So based on the first alternate that the MPO submits, the district kind of projects these volume over capacity layer. And the third one is like a standard sys cost feasible, like Franco just mentioned. These segments, which is I-75 portion of I-275 and State Road 7. So these 3 segments are sys cost feasible for all those alternates. Let's do alternate 3. So this alternate 3 is the recent list of segments that the MPO sent over to the district. And before sending this over, we met with both the counties, Sarasota and Manatee County. So it was like a good feedback and good discussion. And all those feedback that was received by the counties was like well implemented into the model. And so the upcoming alternate 4 is due on April 4. So the main purpose of this interactive map is for all of you to take a closer look at the projects that the MPO is submitting. So there's 3 more alternates for us to kind of funnel down our list of projects that we want to be cost feasible for capacity. So this is more informative and for you to kind of take a closer look and give any feedback that you have for these projects.
It also provides kind of an idea of how few projects, if we take big projects, how few of them end up in the cost feasible list. Compared to what we thought we were going to be able to do in the latest LRTP, in the current LRTP. So, you know, we have to pick and choose a lot more than we did last time around. Last time we had lots of stuff that looked like it might be possible. We had a partnership program with that DOT where they were going to fund projects off the state highway system. I don't think we got any of those projects actually funded. And this time around, we won't probably show that category.
When do you need feedback on all 3 so that it informs all 4?
So the alternate 4 is due April 3rd. So sometime mid-March or late March should be fine. So the feedback that was
2 weeks
given
before the
for
4th. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
the feedback that was given for the E+C network by the counties was taken into consideration while developing this alternate 3. But we still don't have the E+C updated layer, which we are expecting to receive sometime this week. So when we have it, I'll also include that in the map. Yep.
You have summary stats by county for each of the alternates, like which ones actually helped.
So we can work with the department on that. I think that's the goal for the model. It's in general, right? It's not when they break it out by MPO area, but yes, to say which ones made an actual difference on bottom capacity. Yes.
If I recall from the shape file, all the road segments are coded by the county that they're in, so
Yes.
theory, they should
be able to
tell us BMT on roads that are have to be a steep 1.0 or greater, 1.2 or greater, whatever you want to use. That kind of stuff would be.
Yeah, and we've got so many that are performing like at least in, you know, obviously parish area, some of those are nearing 3 in some cases. So the cutoffs will maybe 1.5, whatever it might be, where, you know, if we actually put in said implementation, new item around a new facility, it actually has an impact. We'll make sure that's noted and, you know, that will be certainly considered as part of the cost feasible development process.
So during Ronda's presentation, and I think during the town tours, there was some discussion of what I would just call programs, but we have the term box funds for them. So those kinds of programs you can't capture very well in this type of analysis because it's going to be things like the MMEC, and they even may be more multimodal focused and capacity focused type of improvements. When will a decision be made on the rough split between programs and projects?
That'll be a discussion here as well. I think ultimately what we, with the team, what we always do is we obviously start with everything that's already existing and needs to be completed. And then obviously start at the list of, I can't imagine that our splits on, you know, we're not gonna have $1 billion like we did in the last LRTP to use for box funds. We're looking at doing program types. It's part of what we're developing currently. Is we'll know how much is gonna come off the top for existing projects. And then ultimately, some of these major ones also will be programmed as cost feasible projects, with the remainder being left to be either programmatic or on a needs list. So there will be discussions for the next several months.
There are more PD&Es either underway or completed than there are funds to construct. So a lot of projects that are partially funded and are green on our priority list, we can't do them all. And plus, we have a lot of new projects that are being proposed to add, that are being modeled in some cases.
Well, yeah, and the model doesn't do a very good job, to your point, capturing, you know, it doesn't look at intersection improvements, doesn't look at transit. It doesn't take any of those things into account when modeling traffic, right? It's simply capacity. So we don't have enough money to do all these types of capacity improvements that we're suggesting in this model run. We're simply looking at the ones that, and that's why ultimately the model is not the ultimate deciding factor, right? It's where we can help predict where the traffic's going to fail by 2050. It's not the end all be all decision making tool, how we're gonna make those decisions for policy. So get your point. We'll be working here in the next month or so to finalize and provide. It'll be brought to you all in May as a first draft as well, to say what's the split of how many projects are just gonna be named that are gonna be put into time bands versus things that are gonna be identified.
And what you asked for is clearly what we want to be able to provide, which is which projects will do us the most good, given the limited funds available. You know, from a regional standpoint and within the context of performance objectives.
Further on that, how do we show, like, if we're only looking at one mode here and it's not only the most efficient or cost efficient mode, how do we then look at other modes that could help? If we're looking at capacity of people, not just capacity of SUVs, how do we kind of incorporate that of, yes, we can move people, it's just not gonna be going from 2 lanes to 12 lanes, there's gonna be a different.
Well, and in the ultimate cost feasible plan, that's where we plan to, you know, suggest and recommend. And with your all input, determine, you know, our water taxi is something you want to invest in instead of road widenings. And you know, we've been very successful in getting funding and in all of the jurisdictions onto additional sidewalks and safety projects.
And ultimately working with the state on how they model, right? And then we can say, we will make inferences, my whole point of why it's not the only decision-making tool, right? It's 30% of our decision-making process, right? We have to take in other subjective and other analysis from all of the studies that we do. Those are the things, that's where the program types will come in and say, we know these are the areas you want to focus on, transit or bike ped or whatever it might be. You know, the model helps us understand traffic in a way that was done in the 1990s. I don't think that's the way going forward. We can certainly look at intersection improvements and transit and multimodal, you know, infrastructure. In the modeling process, that will certainly change. I think in the future, where that maybe is a more all-encompassing resource for our decision-making process.
That is it for the agenda. Other than going and doing our once around the table. So we will go around and get any additional member comments. Starting here.
Nothing.
Nothing.
So I want to share a quick story from last week, kind of highlighting the importance of the engineering component of what we're doing with Vision Zero here. So I didn't see any update on our statistics today, but I don't think we're meeting our zero yet. And so I take a legacy trail at Ringling. There's a crosswalk. It's very lovely. It's got the rapid flashing beacons. I stop at the stoplight, wearing a dress on a bike. It's kind of noticeable. I have a high-vis jacket on, push the button, the lights flash. I go through. On the far lane, there's a vehicle coming, and reviewing the 360 camera that I installed mostly because of that intersection. I don't think the vehicle ever stopped on their own. The brakes screeched and they kind of rolled halfway through the intersection, and so I stopped, so it worked out okay. But it was just interesting to see an engineering component of somewhere some automatic braking happened. And you've seen that with cars that do automatic braking, they don't come to a full stop, they kind of roll a little bit. So it's great to see engineering helping, but it was also something that protected the driver and the vehicle rather than the soft squishy occupants outside the vehicle. So just as we're able to make engineering, we've seen it in our safety statistics with the vehicle crashes and just finding ways to help and improve others too.
Couple things. I've heard from both FDOT and from NPO about all the projects and appropriations or the number of projects that are submitted. Just please keep in mind that we are staff, and I can only speak for Sarasota County staff. We do not set policy or what our board wants us to submit. We don't even, as far as I don't submit appropriations. That comes from above my pay grade. So we don't have any control over that. And just keep that in mind. Understand that the monies get pulled from FDOT coffers, but that is not a decision that I can make sitting at this table of what we submit or don't submit for. As to, and there is one other point, I know that for the 2025 project priorities, I understand that Northport has submitted a couple of projects. I just wanted to make it known that there was a letter or memo sent to our commission in regards to those couple of projects. Just giving opining about those impacts, because it's not some of those properties are not Sarasota County alone. They are also controlled by like Swift Mud or other entities that would have a say in that. So that's just putting it out there. And that, I don't have anything else.
Thank you. I don't have anything from the city of Bradenton, so we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone. And our next meeting is Monday, May 12th at 10 a.m.